A Sea of Sorrows by Bookshope21. Chapter 10. Mark of Athena / House of Hades / Blood of Olympus. San Francisco, California, June 25th, 2009. As four demigods came down from the ship above them, Percy, along with Frank and Hazel, approached them. That is when Percy sees her, with golden blonde hair and bright grey eyes. It's his beautiful wise girl. Percy and Annabeth kiss one another, and it feels as though fireworks are going off around them during bonfire nights. Then Annabeth judo flipped Percy. The Romans were about to attack, but then Annabeth helped Percy to stand up after making a promise to never leave her again. Everyone goes for lunch. Ella arrives with Tyson and Mrs. O'Leary. She gives a prophecy concerning Annabeth. Wisdom's daughter walks alone. The mark of Athena burns through Rome. Twins snuff out the angel's breath, who holds the key to endless death. Giant Spain stands gold and pale, won through pain from a woven jail. Percy quickly has Tyson take Ella back to Camp Half-Blood. Leo takes Octavian for a tour of the Argo 2, while Raina and Annabeth go for a walk/talk. Jason and Piper left in order to tour New Rome, which left Hazel, Frank, and Percy. "Let's go pack," says Percy, and the trio pack up some clothes while Percy packs all the stuff that he had brought with him to Camp Jupiter. All of a sudden, the Argo 2 starts firing at the camp. Percy, Frank, and Hazel rush to below the ship, and Percy uses his powers in order to keep the crowd back. Percy sees Annabeth, and he helps Piper to get Jason up the ladder. Hazel and Frank distract them, says Percy, as Hazel summons Arion and Frank turns into a dragon. Percy and Annabeth make it onto the Argo 2. They see Leo firing on the camp, and Percy pushes him to the ground as he shouts at Annabeth to go. Frank lands on the deck of the Argo 2 sometime later, as Leo starts to wake up. It is clear that he doesn't remember anything that happened, with the last thing he remembers is a cold feeling running through his body. Hazel arrives on the ship, and everyone splits up in order to get supplies for repairs. Frank turns into a Pegasus, and he flies Percy and Annabeth to pick up Tar, which results in Percy somehow angering a tar monster, and then the group manage to make it back to the Argo 2 while covered in tar. "Percy, you've seriously bad luck," says Frank, as Percy helps Frank and Annabeth wash off the tar as the repairs are done. All the demigods have their first meal together. They discussed Ella's prophecy and how Nico was looking for the doors of death. After dinner, Annabeth called Percy's arm before he left to go to his cabin. "Percy, we have to do a very important Iris message," says Annabeth, as she and Percy went to her cabin. The lights were on, and Annabeth used a crystal. Percy told her the new words to say. "Oh, Felicie, do me a solid and show me Charlie Weasley at Romanian Dragon Reserve," says Annabeth, as a rainbow appears in her cabin. Percy saw his brother just sitting down for lunch. "Charlie!" cries Annabeth, which causes the aforementioned Weasley to jump in fright. "Percy, you're alive," says Charlie happily, and he looks as though he wanted to hug Percy tightly. "Charlie, I'm okay. I was injured while I was missing, and I can do wondrous magic," says Percy, as his brother smiles at him proudly. "Percy, that's incredible. Dad won the lottery at the ministry, so in July he's going to take Mum, Fred, George, Ron, and Jenny on a trip to Egypt. I received an owl a few days ago, and you are head boy," says Charlie, surprising his little brother. "Molly better not compare the twins to me, 'cause that will make him hate me more," says Percy, with a frown. "Later, Percy, and remember what Bill and I told you," says Charlie, before Annabeth ends the Iris message. Annabeth makes a rainbow, and the Iris message is for Bill Weasley. The couple found him slumped on a table with his head on a plate of salad. "Bill!" screams Percy, which causes his brother to jump out of his seat in fright until he saw the two laughing demigods. "Real funny, Annabeth and Percy. It is fantastic to see you, little brother. Mum Flu called me for 12 hours last night, ranting about you. The twins, Ginny, Ron, and how terrible each of you are. She thinks that you ran off to do something ridiculous. Your girlfriend called me to tell your girlfriend called me to tell me about finding you and Mum just about snapped, says Bill. Percy smiled at his incredible girlfriend. Congrats, Percy. You once again got straight O's. Professor McGonagall has taken to sending me a copy of your marks since your first year. You still will be in your 7th year, although Lockhart tried to claim that he was the son of a Greek god, says Bill. Which god did he try? Asks Percy curiously, and Annabeth was curious as well. He claimed to be the son of Kronos, says Bill, as the couple start howling with laughter. I figured that I would get a reaction from you. I have to go, my lunch break is almost over, says Bill, as Percy ends the call. Percy and Annabeth decide to go to bed, and before they went to bed, Annabeth gave Percy something. My wand? Asks Percy in surprise. Of course, Seaweed Brain, says Annabeth, as she gives him a kiss before going to bed. Percy enters his cabin, and he sees magical pictures of him, Bill, and Charlie, as well as muggle pictures of him and Annabeth. When morning rises, Jason, Piper, and Percy leave to seek out Batches, with Jason and Percy competing with one another to see whose ride would show up first. Blackjack was the first to arrive, and he was happy to see his boss alive. Then Tempest arrives, and the two horses take them to the Topeka line, where they seek Bacchus, searching for Ceres. All of a sudden, Bacchus disappears, and Percy, as well as Jason, become possessed. Percy charged towards Jason, and he knocks the son of Jupiter off of Tempest. All the while, Piper speaks to Blackjack, who throws Percy off of his back and stamps on his head. Blackjack flies Piper, Jason, and Percy back to the ship, and Annabeth is pissed at the horses. When the demigods are having dinner, Piper expels the Eidolon from the 3 boys and from possession anywhere else on the ship, which made both the boys and the girls happy. The 7 flew through the night in order to reach Atlanta, Georgia, and find Farkey. Annabeth snuck into Percy's room, and together they went to the horses' stables. As the couple was talking about Percy's dream, in which he saw Nico in a jar, they fell asleep in the horse stables, which leads to Frank finding them there, and he is terrified at the sight of them sleeping next to one another. While the demigods found it hilarious, their chaperone was pissed. Percy went to the aquarium with Frank and Coach Hedge. Percy and Frank were trapped in a tank by Farkey and his sister, Kato, in order to make them attractions for monsters. It didn't work since the group escaped the aquarium, and they headed for Charleston. Frank turned into a cute iguana in order to escape Chinese handcuffs, which caused everyone to laugh. Percy decided to stay on the ship when they reached the Charleston, because he felt so unclean when he was trapped in the aquarium. Percy and Jason created a massive storm that pushed the Argo out to sea. In order to escape the Romans, and Annabeth had found something that would help her on her quest in Rome. The ship was attacked by a Scolopendra, which Leo and Hazel defeat using Greek fire. Then Frank, Hazel, and Leo go missing, and Percy searches for them, knowing that each minute spent searching for them is one less that Nico has to live. The group has to pass Hercules at Gibraltar. Piper and Jason go ashore to meet him, and Hercules provides to be a massive jerk, just like he is in the mythology. Percy hits the immortal demigod with a wave of water, which leaves him with a feeling of joy because he got revenge on the demigod that had hurt Zoe all those centuries ago. As the ship sails through the Mediterranean Sea, Percy takes over watch duty, and he has Annabeth by his side. He tells her about seeing Nico in a jar, and how 2 giants are talking to a mysterious figure. Percy senses a ship in front of them, and before Percy can tell Leo to stop the ship, the other ship crashes into them, which causes Percy and Annabeth to almost go tumbling off of the bow of the ship. Almost everyone is captured on the ship, and as Chrysaor speaks, that is when Percy makes the connection to Medusa, and how she is his mother. Percy has a sword fight against his half-brother, and with Frank's ability to turn into animals, they manage to defeat Chrysaor, and they sacrifice the treasure in his ships to Bacchus. When the ship reaches Rome, Percy walks Annabeth to meet the god of the Tiber River, and he is worried for his girlfriend. Percy, Piper, and Jason are almost drowned by nymphs, but the three of them use their powers together, and they cleanse the spirits, and enter an underground colosseum. Nico slowly crawls out of the bronze jar. Percy is pissed at Nico for lying to him, but he's also happy that his cousin's alive. Bacchus appears, and he has two satyrs tend to Nico and Piper. With Nico being so weak, Percy is just happy that he's alive. The four demigods are rescued by the Argo II, and Nico's voice is so quiet that Hazel has to lean close to him in order to hear what he is saying. Nico explained how he was in Tartarus, and Percy lost all his anger for his cousin because he had gone somewhere that no demigod had gone before. When they reach Annabeth, everyone was happy that she had found the Athena Parthenos. "Holy Hera, Annabeth, you found the Athena Parthenos," says Percy, as the demigods look at the statue in awe. The cavern that it is in starts crumbling. Leo and Frank rush back to the ship, same with Jason and Piper, in order to secure the statue. All of a sudden, Annabeth is being dragged towards the pit, and Percy grabs her hand as she is being dragged down. Arachne was dragging Annabeth down to Tartarus with her. Percy looks up at Nico, who is holding out his hand, and Percy knows there is no way except for down. The other side, Nico. We'll see you there, understand? Says Percy. Nico's eyes widen. "But lead them there," Percy shouts. "Promise me. I will." Below them, the voice laughed in the darkness. "Sacrifices, beautiful sacrifices to wake the goddess." Then Percy lets go of the cliff, and the two most powerful demigods in centuries fell in Tartarus. They fought together with nothing but one wand and one sword. Question marks. Annabeth point of view. Percy and I have been falling for 9 days, when eventually I spot water below us. "Percy, river," I say as I hold on to my boyfriend tightly. He looks down at the water, and he keeps us afloat. I start hearing about how Percy doesn't love me and that life is meaningless. Percy almost drowned, but I managed to swim us to the river edge. Percy looks at me for an explanation. The Cytus, I say, and Percy looks at me for an explanation. "The river of misery," I say, as I fondly roll my eyes at my seaweed brain. The beach is covered in what feels like broken glass. We have to get to the river Phlegethon, I say, as I look down at all the cuts that we are covered in, knowing that the cuts will get infected. "Sounds like a marathon of hawking spitballs," says Percy, and I give the first genuine laugh in Tartarus. Percy killed Arachne, and I was grateful that he did, because she had terrified me so much. When I faced her, I was terrified that I would end up like the rest of her victims. Percy and I reached the river, and I took a sip from it, but before he could, Percy passed out, and I had to help him drink it. "Spicy," was all Percy could say, and I inwardly smiled, knowing that Percy's humour would keep us going through Tartarus. I remembered when Percy told me about a titan that he wiped the memory of. "Bob," says Percy, and I smiled. Percy helped me walk because of my broken ankle. We used our wands in order to climb down a stiff cliff, which helped both of us. We heard voices, and that is when we saw Imposi, and our least favourite Imposi, Kelly, who vowed to kill Percy. As Percy and I stood back to back, I told the Imposer that Hecate was on the side of the gods. A shadow fell over us, and I gripped Percy's hand, terrified as to whether or not this was another creature that was going to kill us. It was Bob, and he came from Hades' palace, because Percy had said his name, which made me happy, because we had someone to guide us to the doors of death. Percy and I walked behind Bob. We walked for some time, and we hear a rustling sound, which is revealed to be a saber-toothed kitten, which Bob named Small Bob. Small Bob was a good cat, and very helpful. Soon enough, we reached a shrine of Hermes. Percy and I got a chance to rest, and then food appeared. It was the food that was sacrificed to Camp Half-Blood. I took a napkin and used riptide, which could become a pen, and I wrote a note for Rachel to give to Raina. I burnt the note, and I prayed to every god that it would arrive at Camp Half-Blood. In a last-ditch effort to slow down the Romans' attack on the camp that I have called home since I was 7. When we were walking, we were attacked by a rat who cursed Percy and I for every monster that we defeated in the name of our survival. Percy point of view. I was attacking the Arai while trying to destroy as many curses as possible. The Arai had told Bob the truth, and he wasn't helping us. I wouldn't blame him, since he has gotten brainwashed by 4 demigods. Annabeth and I had defeated thousands of monsters since we found out that we were demigods, especially with the Titan War last summer. Annabeth and I continued to fight the Arai with our limited vision, when all of a sudden Annabeth cried out, and I can see the milky white of her right eye. She starts to wander away, and whenever I got close to her, then she would move away. Calypso, I thought, thinking of the immortal girl that I had left on Ogygia. And how that gods had once again failed to keep their promise from the Second Titan War. I blame the gods for every one of my problems. It was because of them that Annabeth and I were currently walking through literal hell. We were probably never going to see our families again. I kept attacking as much of the Arai as I could, and I didn't care about the curses. Luke was right. The gods only used us demigods as pawns, and in another 200 years, there may be more demigods would have to go through the same thing as Annabeth and I are going through right now. Without the gods messing up our lives, then I probably would have a normal life with my family. My younger siblings would still hate me, but I probably wouldn't want to leave the wizarding world, and I would get a job at the ministry. As the Arai started to close in on Annabeth and I sank to my knees and I turned towards Bob. I'm sorry, Bob, I say, before the amount of curses overtake me and I start to pass out, but not before seeing Bob destroy the Arai. He heals Annabeth of her blindness, but not for the cutting curse, as that will never heal. I pass out before I can hear what Bob says, but I feel him carry me before I fully lose consciousness. Annabeth's point of view. I felt so sad that I couldn't comfort Percy. Bob was taking Percy and I to a friend of his who could heal any curse known to the gods. We kept walking, that is until we came across an ancient-looking farmer's hut, and said hut's owner was a massive red dragon. It looks as though Christmas was fighting itself. Soon it was safe for Bob and I to enter the hut, and Damison healed Percy. Percy awakened from the dragon's roar, and we continued moving. Percy and I were every in scars. Covered. Percy and I were covered in scars. We were both unsure as to whether or not we would make it to New Rome. Our small group had separated into 2 separate groups as Percy and I made our way to Aklis in order to be shrouded in death mist. We make our way to Aklis, and she appears useless. She appears useless. She told us that it was impossible to cover our scent from the monsters as well as hide our bodies, since we are famous demigods who killed numerous monsters. So I guess your death mist is pretty useless then, I questioned, and Percy looked at me surprised before he saw me smiling. The goddess bared her broken and yellow teeth. Useless? Who are you? A daughter of Athena, I said, sounding braver than I felt. I didn't walk halfway across Tartarus to be told what's impossible with some minor goddess, I say, and the dust starts to quiver at our feet. Aklis didn't like being called a minor goddess, and when Percy asked for 2 orders of death mist to go, she was pissed. She brought forth numerous poisons that she was going to use in order to boil our bodies and make examples of us. She brought us to the verge of final where night meets the void below Tartarus. Then she put the death mist on us, and Percy looked as though he was a skeleton. His skin was sallow, his eye sockets dark and sunken, his handsome hair dried into a skein of cobwebs. He looked like he'd been stuck in a cool, dark mausoleum for decades, slowly withering into a desiccated husk. Aklis attacked us, and while we were slower, Percy used the poison that were around her, and it looked as though he was about to poison her. Do it, Percy. Make her fade, I say, and when he looks at me. He looked shocked, but he did it. Anyway, because the gods have used us as pawns for far too long. Percy's point of view. Annabeth told me to kill a goddess, and it felt oddly satisfying, just making her echo rise until she became a shelled husk of her former self. Percy, I'm sure that not even your father could control poison, said Annabeth as she kissed me on the lips. We grabbed our bags from where we threw them out of the way of the poison, and we continued on our way. We felt the temperature drop, and the abyss before seemed to exhale. That is when we heard a female voice introduce herself as Night, with the capital N. We looked up, and her chariot looked as though it was made as the same material as Nico's sword, Stygian iron. Her beast's legs turned from smoke to solid as they moved. I smirked at Annabeth. We decided to anger another immortal on our detour. Well, you're Night, I suppose. I mean, I can tell because you're dark and everything. Though the brochure didn't say much about you, comments Annabeth with a straight face. What brochure? Asked Nat, as though we could magically produce one. We had one, didn't we? Questioned Annabeth, and I just nodded my head in agreement. Anyway, I guess the brochure didn't say much because you weren't spotlighted on the tour. We got to see the river Phlegeathon, the Caucasus, the Arai, the poison glades of Eccles, even some random titans and giants, but Nyx? No, you weren't really featured, said Annabeth, and I had to give it to her. She's a good actress. Yeah, I said, warming up to the idea. We came down here for the Tartarus tour, like exotic destinations, you know? The underworld is overdone. Mount Olympus is a tourist trap, I say, before I'm cut off by Annabeth agreeing with me. We booked the Tartarus excursion, but no one ever mentioned we'd run into Nyx. Huh, oh well, guess they didn't think you were important enough, says Annabeth, and Nyx lashes her whip at us, which reminds me of the Fury's whips. She and her children attempt to catch us, but they were unsuccessful and holding hands. Annabeth and I jumped into the house of Nat. I used my heartbeat to write my obituary. Percy Weasley died aged 16. Boom, boom. Died of massive injuries while leaping like an idiot into the abyss of chaos and splattering on the entry hall floor of Nyx's mansion. Boom, boom. Survived by his 2 older half-brothers who loved him. Boom, boom. In lieu of flowers, please send donations to Camp Half-Blood, assuming Gaia hasn't already destroyed it. When Annabeth and I hit solid ground, we started running, and I pulled Annabeth back from the edge to keep her from falling to the edge. We reached the banks of the river Acarion, which is the river of pain. I had Annabeth close her eyes as we jumped across the moat. That is when we reunited with Bob and Small Bob. We were approaching the doors of death. I turned to Annabeth as she turned to me. Annabeth, whatever happens, just know that I've always loved you and that you have made these past few years incredible, I say as I give her a kiss. Third person point of view. The 2 demigods, Titan and saber-toothed tiger, Kitten, made their way to the elevator, which are guarded by Cryos and Hyperion. They insult Tartarus, which results in the primordial absorbing the disrespectful Titans into his armor. Monsters, attack the demigods, cries Tartarus as he causes the death mist that was shrouding Percy and Annabeth to disappear. They had cut the chains and they were getting ready to enter the elevator, but now Percy and Annabeth stood side by side, back to back, in a fight against every monster. Annabeth, let's stick together, says Percy, as he and Annabeth kiss once more before they begin to attack the monsters. There are thousands of monsters, and Percy summons the 5 rivers of the underworld. He directs the water to combine into a hurricane. Annabeth, get behind me, says Percy, as the hurricane reaches its full force. Annabeth holds tightly onto Percy's waist, as the hurricane causes a massacre of the monsters. Hundreds upon hundreds of monsters are decimated in the hurricane, while Demison, Bob, and Small Bob are fighting Tartarus. "Get back!" shouts Percy once as he finished decimating the monsters. There are weapons everywhere, but not a single monster remained. Percy collects the weapons in the hurricane, which only adds to the danger of the hurricane. Bob and Demison protect Annabeth while Percy approaches Tartarus. "You mortals have done nothing but meddle in the lives of demigods for centuries. You have caused thousands of kids pain and suffering for your own gain. If a demigod was ever born out of pure love for the mortal parents, then that would be a first," cries Percy. Percy surrounds Tartarus in the hurricane, and the primordial is unable to attack the demigod as he is ruthlessly attacked, and Percy shows no sign of slowing down. Percy puts all his hatred and annoyance towards immortals into his attack. Tartarus begins to dissolve, and soon the hurricane dissolves with nothing but Tartarus' armor, sword, and shield remaining. "Take these as your trophies in war against the primordial," says Damison, as he and Bob shrink the armor, sword, and shield into smaller pieces. Percy and Annabeth get into the elevator while Bob holds the button. They wave goodbye as they hold the doors closed. They just defeated the biggest monster that they have ever encountered. "Percy, we're going to be remembered for centuries, the two demigods who defeated every monster as well as defeating Tartarus," says Annabeth. Percy looked at the sword with shock while Annabeth held the shield with hesitation. Soon enough, they had reached the upper world and they crawled out of the elevator. Their friends were fighting monsters, so Percy cut the chains himself before he and Annabeth sat on the ground, exhausted beyond belief. When Hecate left, "She's friendly," grumbled Percy, and that is when everyone saw that they had returned. Hazel and Piper ambushed Annabeth with hugs, while Frank, Jason, and Leo gave Percy hugs. "What happened?" asked Nico. "We fought a primordial and won," Percy said with a smile. With help from Hazel, Nico was able to shadow travel out of the House of Hades. Raina, Calypso, and Coach Hedge were waiting for them on deck, as Percy and Annabeth are forced to lay down on a blanket, while they are given ambrosia and nectar. The food of the gods stops the bleeding and heals their wounds to an extent. Percy took his portion of the armor out of his bag, while Annabeth did the same with her portion. "We defeated Tartarus," Percy and Annabeth say in sync with one another. Everyone looks at them surprised. "Percy, you are insane," says Nico to his cousin. Percy and Annabeth take turns telling their story to their friends, who are all amazed at the courage and ingenuity that Percy and Annabeth portrayed in their survival of Tartarus. "We also have these," says Percy, as he shows the sword, which was similar to Nico's, with one different detail: it was taller than buildings. Annabeth's shield shined in the sunlight, as though it was made of pure diamond. As Raina, Nico, and Coach Hedge got ready to leave, Percy hopped over to his cousin. Percy thanked Nico for telling Bob that they were good, as well as visiting him. "Nico, if I don't make, then tell my uncle that I love him," says Percy, as Nico was strapped in for the journey from Greece to New York. Iago, too, flew off with 7 demigods and 1 former immortal aboard to finish their quest at the Pantheon. While 2 demigods and a satyr shadow travelled from Euprius to Long Island Sound, all the individuals were hoping they would be successful in their defeat against the primordial goddess of the earth. Meanwhile, in New York, the Pontifex Maximus of Camp Jupiter had a tantrum worthy of any toddler over the fact that no monster would be able to help in the attack against the Greek camp. All of them were afraid to be slaughtered by the infamous heroes Percy Jackson and Annabeth Chase. Argo 2, Flying Towards Greece, July 2009. It had been a few days since Percy and Annabeth had escaped Tartarus. The 7 demigods and the former immortal came up with a plan for the prophecy in order to ensure that they all survive. It was decided that they would make the physician's cure as well as rebuild Festus. Leo, Jason, Piper, and Percy worked together in order to prepare for the final battle against Gaia. It was shortly after Jason was stabbed the Imperial sword. Percy went to change his bandage and they got to talking about their futures. Man, I'm probably going to remain at Camp Jupiter since I've never known a life outside of it, replies Jason, and Percy frowns as he thinks about Piper. Jason, dude, what about Piper? She told Annabeth that she wants to be a model or an actress like her dad, says Percy. I don't know, man, but I'm probably going to live at Camp Jupiter, says Jason sadly. Dude, my year mates helped to apply for different magical universities, and I'm going to reject them to attend New Rome University. But even so, I'm not sure if I'm even going to be accepted, says Percy. Jason punched Percy in the shoulder. Dude, the applications are given to the Praetor. Raina's going to have you accepted, as well as your friends. Annabeth is going to be attending New Rome with you, says Jason. They look at Percy's watch, which was a gift from Tyson, and it's time for dinner. They go to the dining hall, and it is tastefully decorated since Annabeth and Leah's birthday had passed during the couple's time in Tartarus. It didn't feel right to celebrate the birthdays without the full crew aboard, and it worked out with Calypso creating gifts for Annabeth and Leah, while Hazel, Piper, and Frank decorated the dining hall / baked the cake. In the absence of candles, Leo just lit his fingers on fire for Annabeth to blow out, and he did the same for himself. They continued to have fun with one another, even as the day of their impending doom grew closer. Jason saves Percy after he nearly drowns after meeting his half-sister, who is absolutely destructive with storms. Nike continuously screams in the stables about how the demigods were going to fail and stuff. Soon enough, they arrive in Greece. Calypso uses her powers in order to make the giant immobile. Percy, now! Cries Annabeth, and Percy thrusts Riptide into the ground, causing water to erupt from the ground. Percy summons enough water to fill up a lake, and he uses the fallen pieces of the Argo 2 as weapons. The giants are quickly surrounded by a hurricane of water and weapons. Poseidon sees what Percy is doing, and he joins his son. Soon enough, all of the giants are destroyed, but there is one lone monster that survives the massacre in Tartarus. Let's do it, Annabeth, says Percy, as he takes his sword in its black glory, while Annabeth takes her shield, and they destroy the Hydra. The gods have no time to ask them questions, as camp is under attack. Zeus sends them flying back, and the Argo 2 lands in the lake. The demigods arrive on the battlefield by flying or in Festus. Legion format advance, cries Raina, as the Romans get ready for the battle, while over with the Greeks. Greeks, let's fight stuff, says Percy, as the two groups of demigods who had warring for centuries came together to defeat a common foe. Romans and Greeks fought side by side, while Leo, Jason, Piper, and Percy worked on Gaia. Piper and Leo distracted her, while Jason and Percy used their powers over the wind and the waves to their advantage. The two boys created a hurricane, which launched a fireball that Octavian had created into the sky, and at Gaia, but not before it pushed Leo and Piper out of the way. The hurricane's force was used to sweep up each and every weapon from a fallen demigod. The weapons in the hurricane smashed and decimated the monster forces that Octavian had hired. At the end of the battle, Piper and Leo were rushed to the infirmary with serious burns, while Jason and Percy were suffering from exhaustion. The 4 demigods slept for 3 days, and they regained enough energy to be able to move around without much pain. Piper's half-sister, Lacey, helped her to find clothes that would cover her burns, while Chiron informed her father. Tristan came up with a clever lie that Piper and some friends that she had made at an exclusive camp were in a boating accident. She and another suffered burns, while 2 boys were exhausted from keeping them afloat all night. August 18th, 2009, Camp Offload, Long Island Sound. Percy arrives for breakfast that morning, and there are 4 owls waiting for him. 3 of them are from his only friends at Hogwarts, while the last one is his school supply list. "Yo, Karen, can I go and get my school supplies?" asks Percy. "You may, Percy, but Annabeth, Jason, and Piper are going with you. They've already asked," says Chiron, and Poseidon flies onto Percy's shoulder, thrilling happily at the sight of his owner. The group was Phoenix Flash to Diagon Alley. Annabeth, Jason, and Piper were staring at the alley with their mouths wide open. "Come on, guys, we have to go to Gringotts so I can pay for my school supplies," says Percy, and all of the witches and wizards are looking at the group in shock over the orange and purple shirts. The group exits to the bank, and they go to Flourishing Blots, which cause Annabeth to have heart eyes. "Yo, Percy, aren't they your brothers and sisters?" asked Jason. Percy scowled in annoyance when the Weasleys came over to him with Hermione and Harry in tow. "Percy, come along. We will get you your school supplies, and your so-called friends can return to their supposed camp," says Molly, in a condescending tone, but she took a step back when Percy took a step back. "Enough, Molly Weasley. I'm done with you acting as though I am just a child playing make-believe. I'm going to come to the Burrow at the end of the year in order to collect my few belongings. Aside from that, I'm never going to spend another night at that Burrow. If I ever have to return to living under the same roof as you, then Voldemort should bloody well be returned," says Percy, before Annabeth gave Percy a dip with a kiss. The groups went their separate ways as the 4 heroes finished up the shopping for their friend. The heroes returned to camp, and Karen turned it into a game, with each cabin helping Percy to pack his trunk. Percy found it hilarious as the Ares cabin got into a tug-of-war with the Athena cabin over the Care of Magical Creatures textbook. By August 31st, Percy was all packed with passing gifts from each cabin, which could be used in either self-defense or as a prank on his twin brothers. Percy was excited to be head boy that year, and as he waved goodbye to his friends, Percy was excited for his final year at Hogwarts. It was finally graduation day. Arthur and Molly arrived to congratulate Percy on his graduation, but he just ignored them. "Let's go and get my stuff," says Percy, as he, Leo, and Piper mount Pegasi to fly to camp. Frank, Hazel, and Jason have to leave in order to help Apollo complete his trials to regain his godhood. Annabeth left to help her uncle to find her cousin. They met up in Boston, but Magnus was already dead, so Annabeth returned to camp. The trio arrived at the Burrow, and Percy brought them to his shared room. They packed up his books and the few other items that had remained at the Burrow before Poseidon, the Phoenix, flashed them and the Pegasi back to camp. Percy went to find Annabeth, while Piper went to New York for an audition in a musical, while Leo went to Bunker 9 to be with Calypso. "Percy, could we go to West Virginia? I want to reconnect with my dad," says Annabeth. "Let's go tomorrow. We can take the Pegasi and be back before supper," says Percy, as they packed a light bag before having supper that evening. Percy was happy to have finally left the Weasleys, as they just ruined their own success. In the morning, Percy and Annabeth informed Chiron of their plan, and he allowed it. The Pegasi brought them to the train station, which the couple took in order to come up with a plan. They made their way to West Virginia. They walked up a path that they had last walked nearly 11 years prior. Annabeth noticed 3 painted rocks, with the oldest having a stuffed owl next to it. Annabeth knocked on the door, and a woman opened the door. "Yes, how can I help you?" asked the woman. "Hi, I'm here to see my dad, Frederick Chase," says Annabeth, as the woman turned around and yelled for Frederick. "Yes, Susan?" asks Frederick, as he sounded somewhat breathless. "She says that you're her father," says Susan in an annoyed tone, and she leaves in order to do something else. "Annabeth," says Frederick, as he hugs his daughter, who hugs him back. "Come inside, Annabeth. You as well, Percy," says Frederick. "Bobby and Matthew, come here, boys," calls Frederick, as 2 identical boys come down the stairs. Yeah, Dad? Asked the boys in tandem. Frederick, my sister mentioned that a girl came to visit, says Helen. Bobby, Matthew? Helen, please welcome Annabeth and her boyfriend Percy Weasley, says Frederick, and Percy took a small step back as Bobby, Matthew and Helen ambushed Annabeth in a hug. Tell what has happened, asks Matthew, as the family sits on the couch while Percy and Annabeth share the love seat. The couple proceed to tell the family about their quests, and Frederick looked horrified at the fact that his daughter fell into Tartarus. Dad, Magnus is just like us, but the son of a Norse god, says Annabeth, and Frederick looks surprised at the news as he remembers his brother telling him about the death of his nephew and their sister before his brother's premature death from an unknown cause. Bobby and Matthew were thrilled to tell Annabeth about how they were doing in school. Soon enough, Percy and Annabeth had to return to camp for dinner and curfew. Annabeth, promise that you will invite us to your wedding, asked Frederick as the couple were heading out of the door. Of course, Dad, and I'll keep in contact, says Annabeth. She gives her dad, brothers, and stepmom one last hug. Percy and Annabeth got married on August 1st, 2015, much to the celebration of their friends and family from Camp Half-Blood, Camp Jupiter, Brooklyn House, and Hotel Valhalla. Bill, Fleur, Charlie, and Victoria were the only Weasleys invited. Molly attempted to crash the wedding, but she was stopped by Clarice and Chris, who were the security guards for the wedding. All of the 7 got married, and they each led successful lives with their partners. Piper became a famous actress, while Jason took care of their children. Hazel opened her own jewelry store, while Frank became a zoologist, and they shared the work of taking care of their kids. Leo and Calypso opened their own repair shop, which became famous across the whole of America. Each of the 7 had 4 kids. The kids shared the same birthday, and when it was time for the kids to attend camp, the 2 campers had returned as one camp. The 2 camps had reunited as one camp, so the kids were still able to explore both their Roman and Greek heritage. Then, in the year 2093, at the age of 100, Percy and Annabeth passed away while surrounded by their great-grandkids and kids. Centuries later, Camp Half-Blood, Athens, Greece. Campers, tonight the Hunters of Artemis shall tell you a tale about the greatest demigod to have ever lived, announces Charon, to the surprise of the campers, as the Hunters of Artemis rarely ever showed up to camp. 2 hunters approached the campfire. They had the symbols of the big 3 on their arm. Tonight we shall tell a tale about a son of Poseidon who saved the world from Kronos, as well as Gaia. This son of Poseidon was blind until Apollo healed him. The son of Poseidon united the mythological world and made so that all of the gods were more connected with the other pantheons, said the black-haired and blue-eyed hunter. A girl from the Poseidon cabin raised her hand. What was his name? Asked the girl. She was a descendant of Poseidon if her blonde hair was a takeaway. She had just returned from her first year at Hogwarts, where her family had attended for centuries. His name was Perseus Achilles Weasley. He was blinded by a curse when he was a year and a half old. His parents abandoned him at my mom's house. I took him when I ran away, and I am grateful that I did, for he saved my life, says the blue-eyed hunter. My ancestor, Charles Weasley, he haunts the halls of my family's house, and he has told me about his brother, Percy, says Victoria Weasley, and the 2 hunters smiled at her, for she shared the same positivity as Percy. Percy saved my life by finding the Golden Fleece and bring me back to life after my tree was poisoned. My name is Thalia Grace, and this is Bianca D'Angelo, says Thalia. A clatter could be heard as the demigods see massive armor, which appears to belong to a massive figure. Percy and Annabeth fell into Tartarus. They defeated the primordial Tartarus. As their spoil of war, they were left with his armor, sword, and shield, says Chiron. The campers were impressed at the size of it. Unlike my brats of a half-brother, Perseus, Percy was kind and caring to all of those around him, and especially loved Annabeth Chase, who later became his wife, says Thalia, as she remembers having to bring her half-brother to camp, and he continuously complained about everything. Perseus acted as though he was the greatest demigod at camp, yet Thalia and the rest of the hunters hardly visited camp because of him and the rest of the male campers. The campfire ended that night, and it was a fire to celebrate the start of a new summer camp. Cute. I'm dead. That one it wasn't much of an actual fic, it was mostly just like, here's a summary of everything that happened in this and this, which honestly, thanks for that. Like, I forgot what happened in half of those, never actually read Harry Potter, so I don't know what happened in those ones, I didn't actually follow him. Anyway, fun. I got my water, by the way. Oh, I'm dead. Why is this on 40 minutes? What the hell? Anyway, thanks for listening.